What say you, Brian? Are we good to go?
Yeah, it just
Muted.
always takes the live stream a couple of seconds to start up, but now you are good to go, Ken.
Okay. Oh, good. Thanks, Brian. All right. Once again, greetings. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the War Industry Resistors Network. Many of you have been with us before, and if you haven't, you should know this is our 44th webinar. We do them on a monthly basis. We've been around, well, it's getting close to 4 years now. So we originated as a coalition of grassroots groups who were opposing different war industries like Raytheon or Northrop Grumman or Lockheed, the war corporations themselves. And so we initially tried to organize some local actions. And then after a while, we were hoping to be a clearinghouse for people who were doing actions. And we got a little of that, but mostly what we've been doing is webinars. And we've been doing webinars on all the various tentacles of the military-industrial complex, from the corporations themselves to the media to the universities to border patrol and more. So this evening, what we have is presenter Roy Jones and I'll introduce him in a second, from Wales, and he and his group there have been one of these local organizations that has been opposing the military-industrial complex. So we mean to have people on as presenters who are actually doing something out in the field. And it looks like we may have another one lined up in October out of Louisville, Kentucky. Anyway, so let me introduce Roy. And if you read the blurb I sent out when we promoted this webinar, you know that it's called PARC against DARC. And DARC, D-A-R-C, is Deep Space Advanced Radar Capability. It's this radar system that the U.S. is trying to put in place, I'm sure, in conjunction with the U.K. right there in Wales. And PARC is Pembrokeshire against the radar campaign. It's the activist group trying to push back against and prevent this radar system. So that's what Roy's here to tell us about. And let me read you his bio just so you know a little bit about him, then we'll turn it over to Roy. So Roy Jones is a former musician who was part of the post-punk scene in London in the late 70s, early 80s with his band Red Beat. During this time, he was active in the movement to stop cruise missiles with nuclear warheads being deployed in Western Europe. He later toured the States in 1987 as a keyboard player with the Howard Jones Band. In the early 90s, he was a founding member and fundraiser for the peace group PARC, Pembrokeshire Against the Radar Campaign, who successfully fought, in that case, against U.S. military plans to build a massive over-the-horizon radar installation in a similar location to the DARC radar proposal being planned today. A long-standing Buddhist and a member of the lay Buddhist group SGI, Roy has continued to use his music to fight against nuclear weapons as a supporter of the International Campaign Against Nuclear Weapons, ICAN, and the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, CND. So, Roy, I'm going to turn it over to you. And by the way, as far as next month goes, before I let Roy have at it, let me let you know that in September 3rd, 8 p.m. our normal time, we're going to have our next webinar. And it's going to be, as we have in the past, about Palestine. This one's about the West Bank of Palestine. And we're really fortunate to have Jasper Nathaniel, a journalist who's been covering that pretty well. We're going to have him on September 3rd. So I'm going to put a link to that in the chat, and just a heads up that that's what we got for next month. And okay, so good. Roy Jones, please, over to you.
Thank you, Ken. So my proposal is called keeping the space above us for peace and science, not war and profit. PARC against DARC's campaign to stop a military radar in a Welsh national park. So I'll just start to show my screen. A proposal originating from Donald Trump's US Space Force, DARC, Deep Space Advanced Radar Capability, can be said in a sentence to be a significant element in plans by Trump and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk to cultivate an arguably illegal monopoly over the global commons of space, increasing the capacity of the US for both territorial dominance over the space domain and the military targeting of foreign satellites. It is on both a local and national basis, though, that PARC, Pembrokeshire Against the Radar campaign, presents its case to you today. The Ministry of Defence proposed array, which would involve 27 large radar dishes, each 15 meters wide and 21 meters tall, over an area of over 1 square kilometre, in full view of the UK's only coastal national park in Pembrokeshire, is roundly and very strongly opposed for its many potential impacts on the open rural landscape of the St. David's Peninsula. Its extreme and unprecedented visual impact on the landscape, its insufficiently addressed radiation impacts on the health of local people, its heavy and damaging ecological footprint, its poor military strategic suitability in the context of very poor local road accesses and a significant surrounding residential population, and its far-reaching economic impacts on an area of high tourism and cultural heritage value, in which the cathedral city of Wales's patron saint, St. David, finds its home, are just some of the primary reasons why it is believed to be deeply inappropriate by so many people. Security. Would the building of this massive installation benefit the security and well-being of our planet? Our research finds it plausible that DARC violates such international laws as the 1967 Outer Space Treaty's prohibition on the national appropriation of space, and so not only harms global well-being, but also undermines Welsh Government's international strategy of establishing Wales as a globally responsible nation. The basic tenets of this UN treaty are that space should only be used for peaceful purposes which benefit all humankind. While the UK Ministry of Defence states that its purpose is to protect the civilian satellite network, today many civilian satellites are also used for military surveillance and targeting purposes. Moreover, the US Space Force, who have commissioned a US arms company, Northrop Grumman, recently responsible for supplying arms which have been used in the genocide in Palestine to design and build the DARC arrays, have publicly stated their desire is to both dominate the space medium and to possess an ability to deny others the use of space. In 2014, when 126 countries voted against the first placement of weapons in outer space, the US was one of just 4 nations to vote for such weapons, a group which did not include the UK. This is entirely consistent with a US foreign policy tightly influenced by US and international arms lobbyists that has placed a doctrine of expansionism at the heart of US economic dominance. Wales has both a role to play in the way its international relations are conducted and the way it is perceived globally, and a right to an international strategy of its own. It has a right to object to planning proposals as it sees fit and as benefits its infrastructural capacities, compliances with international law, the tenets of its own well-being of future generations legislation, and the roles of responsibility it has to play in global peace and security. The MOD, prior to its messaging shift towards increased obfuscation about DARC's military purposes that came with its employment of a public relations company, Cascade Communications, no doubt following our campaign, was clear, along with the US Space Force, driving DARC and the AUKUS project in general about what DARC's stated aims were. They were to overmatch our strategic competitors by bolstering the defense capabilities of AUKUS nations. AUKUS is an arrangement made by the US, UK, and Australia to collaborate militarily to pressurize potential adversaries, with a particular focus on the Chinese region. Of the 3 proposed DARC radar installations, only the Australian site has begun actual construction. While on the one hand, DARC is said to be for defense, on the other, it is utilizing other nations' soil to gain space superiority, to quote US Air Force Chief of Staff David Goldfein. Donald Trump's recently announced Golden Dome missile defense system, with a price tag of a minimum of $550 billion over the next 20 years, would seek to enable the US to successfully inaugurate a nuclear first strike by combining existing ground-based missile tracking systems with new space-based interceptors, despite claims that a foolproof missile shield, while requiring thousands of new satellites, would likely be unable to stop hypersonic missiles and be thwarted by drone swarms or decoy missiles, as the latest successful Iranian missile launches have demonstrated. While DARC's main aim would be to target other nations' satellites and reduce their ability to track and neutralize a US first strike, it isn't beyond the bounds of reason that the 3 deep space radar sites could be incorporated into the Golden Dome infrastructure, increasing the accuracy of the tracking of missiles in any weather conditions. It is certain that the resurgence of the philosophy of a possible first strike of nuclear weapons would greatly increase global insecurity and trigger a global arms race, diverting the Earth's limited resources once again into the pockets of the arms manufacturers at the expense of everyone else. DARC, however, has little value to add to UK defence, as a proposal not solely made by Wales or the UK promises to play an escalatory role in increasing tensions in the space domain. It benefits primarily a US-centred agenda that is widely criticised by most nations in the UN, and introduces heightened military risk with little relevant strategic benefit to Wales, to Brawdy, and its sensitive surrounding residential areas. The MOD has offered and seemingly intends to offer no cost-benefit analysis that could confirm whether DARC meaningfully meets criteria of strategic military necessity as compared with other funding priorities within a context of extensive funding gaps within Welsh and UK military infrastructure and training. A space physicist approached by PARC, Dr. David Webb, highlights the overinvestment in AUKUS space surveillance network, which is argued already duplicates DARC's functions without it being clear the array is required. Such surveillance infrastructure includes US Space Force Delta II, the Globus radar series, the Space Surveillance Fence, GSSAP, and GODSS, which together already extensively monitor low Earth and geosynchronous orbits, in some case at a similar resolution to DARC. DARC radar would, furthermore, and owing to the publicly recorded statements, documentation, and enacted policy of the United States, place Wales in violation of important principles of international law, with DARC sited in Wales, but the US, to quote Bruce Gagnon, holding the tip of the spear in the Pentagon. The US's statements suggest DARC would violate in the 1967 Outer Space Treaty's prohibition on national appropriation of the space domain, as well as potentially the prohibition on the harmful contamination of space by virtue of the targeting use of DARC for space fires, constituting a material contribution to increased Kessler syndrome probabilities. The Kessler syndrome, for those who don't know, is a scenario predicted to occur by scientists when debris created by the breakup of man-made metallic objects in space, which are orbiting the Earth at velocities equivalent to bullets, hit other objects such as satellites and cause them to break up, potentially causing a cascade effect, which would lead to a vast field of space debris moving at high speeds, which would prevent the further deployment of satellites or space exploration for many decades. Claims by the MOD that DARC is intended to help monitor space so as to prevent or avoid Kessler syndrome probabilities are strongly contested and regarded by critics to be a part of MOD propaganda that itself arose potentially as a reaction to campaigners' criticisms concerning DARC's space debris risks in the first place. Campaigners such as us in PARC are clear that one of DARC's biggest and most unique environmental risks, and a significant charge against it, is that it would be a net contributor to heightening space debris risks, owing to the fact that it is intended to provide targeting support for space fires, i.e. shooting down foreign satellites. Such destruction events themselves, in the event DARC was engaged in helping to facilitate them, could themselves constitute very significant potential originating causes of the very Kessler space debris cascade scenario under discussion that could, in a worst case, threaten thousands of civilian and other satellites in space. So that's the bit that I wanted to start off with. That's our case. But now I'd like to change tack and focus on, what we've actually been doing as a campaign to try and stop this from happening. So we started off by building a website, which was bilingual, because Wales, a bit like Canada, is a bilingual country. So our website is bilingual, and it's called parkagainstdark.com. Next thing, once that was launched, we held a public launch with a public meeting in a local village called Solva on the 27th of June 2024. And to advertise this, we went round to all the local houses and posted flyers through their doors advertising it beforehand. We had 5 speakers presenting, including 2 international scientists who gave us video presentations covering the health risks. And we also had a wildlife expert covering potential environmental impacts, a representative from the peace group CND, Campaign for the Nuclear Disarmament, Cymru, and that's Wales in Welsh, and myself and Jim Scott from PARC. The second half featured a panel of speakers answering questions from the floor from local residents. And we got locals to sign up to our email list and directed them to sign our online petition, which was growing rapidly. I think our petition at the moment's reached nearly 18,000 signatures. So next, we made a Zoom presentation to the Welsh Parliament's Peace and Reconciliation Committee, and that led to them initiating some research led by a team which was led by Professor Colin McInnes from a local Welsh university. We made a presentation to St David's City Council, who pledged their support for the radar campaign, which later manifested in the form of allowing us to put a no radar, dim radar banner outside the City Hall, which was great, because it really sort of showed that, the local, we were being supported by the local, community council or the city council. Then on July the 4th, 2024, there was a general election in Britain, and leading up to this was an opportunity to pressure local politicians and candidates from all parties to give their opinions on the DARC proposal. So we had a lobbying page on the website, which was used by lots of local people, like to reach out to all these candidates and to get them to try and support us. In July, we got some new information leaflets made in both English and Welsh, in time to go to the CND Cymru tent at the National Eisteddfod, which is a kind of an annual cultural event held in Wales. It's quite an important event. And I made a speech there in Welsh at the peace tent. And I took loads of flyers with me, and they were being handed out, and so we were spreading the word, wide in a wider Wales sense. And then we got 5 roller banners made to put up outside 2 local public events, which the MOD organized in September. That they were obviously starting to get a bit worried about what we'd been doing, so they organized 2 like charm offensives, one in Solva and one in St David's, and they were hoping to persuade all the local people that this was just a harmless science project, and what was the big deal. So what we did is we set up all these roller banners outside the halls, and with protesters who had these no radar signs, hanging around their necks, and we basically, and also we had these roller banners that had it was like our own events that we created outside the hall, and I think in the war between the MOD's charm offensive and our counter protests, I think we were the winners, because we got all the media coverage was supporting us, and we got onto Welsh TV and lots of newspaper articles as a result of that. So, and the next major event was following. First, we set up a local supporters meeting and set up a research group, a lobbying group, and a flyering group. And then we went to there's a political party in Wales called Plaid Cymru, who are they're about the second biggest party in Wales, and at the moment actually they're polling as the top party in Wales. We went to their conference in Cardiff, and we got our banners translated into Welsh, because they're a very pro Welsh language party, and as a result of that, we got a motion passed by Mabon ap Gwynfor, who is a member of the Welsh Parliament, but he's also the vice chair of the campaign for nuclear disarmament in Wales, and basically this motion was passed unanimously, and so we got official support from the second biggest political party in Wales, which is really useful, as things are progressing towards there's going to be elections next year. Having that party supporting us, openly, is quite a big thing. And we got loads of press coverage about this as well. So 2 weeks later, me and Jim Scott from the campaign, we went to an event in Merthyr Tydfil called People, Peace and Planet, Not Profit, and we ran a stall, and we set up both English and Welsh roller banners, and got to meet some people who've endorsed our campaign, some quite prominent Welsh politicians like Leanne Woods, Beth Winters, who was a former MP, and Anthony Slaughter, who is the head of the Wales Green Party. So, the campaign started moving into a political phase, whereby getting the support from Plaid the Greens and the Liberal Democrats, we can exert pressure on Labour to end their silence and instead do a U-turn or risk defeat in the Senedd elections next year. So this year we initiated 2 mechanisms to register policy support for the campaign in both Welsh and UK parliaments. In the Welsh Senedd, we got 17 MSs to sign a statement of opinion condemning DARC from both Plaid and left-wing Labour members of the Welsh Parliament. And then we also, in the UK Parliament, we got 20 MPs to support an early day motion calling for the DARC proposal to be scrapped on the grounds that it violated international law. And we made some booklets that as part of this and gave an individualized letter along with a 12-page fully referenced booklet to every MP and member of the Senedd. So that's more than 700 politicians, that's something we did like in the 90s as well. We wrote to every MP, and there wasn't a Senedd then, but you know, that was quite a big deal getting that all together. So you know, they've all they can't say they don't know anything about this. And then we around Christmas time we got a load of more leaflets made, and we went around our local county, the county of Pembrokeshire, and we hand delivered 15,000 of flyers, you know, in a wider area, especially targeting marginal wards and wards where councillors were on the planning committee. So so more recently, this year we've just organised a beach demo on Newgale Beach, which is the beach which kind of overlooks, there it is there, overlooks where the DARC radar will be. That's Newgale Beach. And you know, we got about 200 people, and we all joined hands on top of the pebble bank. And you know, and we got a drone to fly along and take some great video footage of it all, which is really good for kind of social media posts, and interviewed local people about why they didn't want DARC. So that was really great. And the next day I went up to the National Eisteddfod again and made another speech in Welsh, and participated. You know, I think it's good to network with other peace groups, you know, and to help and support each other. You know, we've been trying to do that, and we've been getting financial support from the campaign for nuclear disarmament, which has really helped. So that's what we've been doing. So in conclusion, ultimately, the decision about whether the construction of the DARC radar installation proceeds in Wales rests with the new Trump administration in the States. When I was involved with the campaign to stop a similar radar farm in the early 90s, we managed to reach out across the Atlantic to the US Senate and to religious figures like the Bishop of Massachusetts. While we have already prepared a robust objection to any planning application which might be submitted to the County Council in the future, we could then appeal to the Welsh Government if it is approved, and ultimately take it to the High Court. The surest way of stopping it, though, is to influence decision makers in the US that it isn't worth the bad PR and costs to an already stretched US military budget. Trump has initiated a review into AUKUS projects, which seem to have already scuppered some plans for the Australians to build nuclear-powered submarines with the aid of UK nuclear reactor engines to patrol the South Pacific. If the review decides DARC is really needed for the Golden Dome, then we are ready to fight it to the end. But we'd really appreciate any help we can get to raise the profile of this issue in the United States. And as we say in our promo video, if we work together, we can stop DARC. Thanks very much. How do I do that? Top share. I think I'm going to have to.
There, I needed to unmute myself. Can you all hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can hear you, Ken.
Oh, okay. It just asked me to unmute myself. So anyway, thanks, Roy. That was very comprehensive, and you all have done a lot, and maybe we can get after that, some of that in the Q&A. But before we go to Q&A, we're going to bring on Bruce Gagnon. who is with the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space, something that Roy is connected to as well, and the activist group there is connected to. And so, Bruce, please tell us about the Global Network and what you've got going on recently and to come. Go ahead, Bruce.
First, let me just say, well done, Roy. Really great presentation. I think you described it all very well. To me, the most important point you made was that this is part of U.S. first strike attack planning. They want to be able to knock out other countries' satellites, disable them at the time of a U.S. first strike attack. And what they're going to do is have warplanes go up as high as they can into lower space and fire missiles at satellites of the enemy, of the quote unquote enemy. And this attack would be directed by this DARC program. And so it's really, really absolutely part of this US First Strike plan. This whole campaign, I think, is one great illustration of the global nature of the US NATO war machine's plan to control and dominate space on behalf of corporate interests. So if you're not part of the Western 500-year colonial colonizing team, you're now an enemy of this program, and that's who they're going to use it against. So this is indeed a global campaign, and we can't let groups in places like Wales that are fighting against this stand alone. We've got to do everything we can to help illuminate their campaigns and help support them. So that's the work of the Global Network when it comes to space issues. On September 13th and 14th, we're going to have our 33rd annual Global Network Conference. We're going to do it online on Zoom. And I'm just putting right now, previously I put information in the chat about it. And right now I'm going to put the link again where you can go and look at it. So September 13th and 14th, depending on where you live. And our keynote speaker is KJ No, I think, who many of you have heard of and seen. He's going to be talking about the coming US-NATO war on China. And because of that, we're really trying to make this particular event more accessible to people in the Asia Pacific. So we're starting at a little different time so that we can allow people in the Asia Pacific to be able to see it. Usually they get left out of many of these kind of events. So the other thing I want to mention is every year for many, many years, we've been holding Keep Space for Peace Week, a week of decentralized local events around the world to eliminate the local situation and then connect it to the overall larger situation. And so that week is going to be October 4th through 11th. And we're now working on a poster for that particular week of events. So thank you, Ken, for allowing me to make these announcements. And thanks again, Roy. You're doing a great job. And please send our best wishes to everybody back in Wales that's working on this.
Thank you, Bruce. And if by any chance you don't know Bruce's organization, Bruce put the link in the chat, and I would encourage you and urge you actually to get connected to the Global Network. Okay, and by the way, Bruce, we did have KJ No on as a WIRN webinar one time, and he is most excellent. He's very good, and he actually has a podcast of his own now. So if you don't know KJ No, you should Google him and check him out on his podcast. Okay, so let's do a little bit of Q&A. We have a little bit of time here, and if you've been with us before, you know the way we do it. It's there's a reaction button in your interface, your Zoom interface, and there in the reaction button, you can raise your hand, digitally raise your hand. And so if you would do that, then I can see that your hand is raised and I'll call on you, and maybe we can get 3 or 4 or 5 so people to pose a question to Roy. You can make a comment if you like, I generally ask people to keep the comments short and to be sure to have a question that Roy can respond to. So if anybody has a question, please do that. Raise your hand, and I'll call on you, and you can unmute and ask them a question. I see you, Paul. Okay, so Paul Shannon, please go ahead, unmute yourself, Paul.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Thanks so much, Roy. Well, let me just start by saying that is quite an amazing mobilization. I'm very jealous. But congratulations for putting that together and to have so many different dimensions to it. I have just some factual questions. One is, you mentioned that so far the only part of DARC that is actually in process is in Australia. But are not those radars that are in your slides, are not those in Wales?
Those are kind of you know, artist's impression
Good.
of what it would look like if it was built. But yeah, it is certainly being built in Australia. Although at first you know, some of the satellite images had been sort of covered up, but now you know, you can see now from the sky that it's clearly that they're progressing quite quickly with that. I read an article recently that was kind of suggesting that our site might be going ahead, although from a British point of view, we haven't heard anything for quite a while about things proceeding. The tone of the article was kind of sounded like someone was making a request to kind of for funding, you know, from Congress, you know, so that they could push ahead with this. And they were going on about how amazingly quick they'd been at sort of progressing with the Australian site.
Okay.
Thing is, I don't think there's been any objections from local people in Australia that the site is quite a long way from any populations on the north coast of Oz.
Yeah. And from what you said, DARC and the Golden Dome are related, but they're different projects.
Yeah. I mean, you know, DARC was originally, you know, one of, you know, set up as one of three projects. You know, one in the States, one here, and one in Oz, and you know, in order to track specifically satellites in synchronous orbit, so that they could be, you know, targeted and destroyed, and you know, and this arrangement was sort of you know, came together under the Democrats, and it seems as if maybe Trump is sort of, because of that, is like not too happy about, you know, it's just going along with it, but. And as I say, they've pulled back on some of those AUKUS projects, like the nuclear subs in Australia, that the Australians were supposed to be building in conjunction with British nuclear engines, and that seems to have been scrapped. But you know, the thing is, it's very hard. There's been no announcement saying DARC is not happening anymore. And with this new kind of Golden Dome stuff, you know, it makes you think, well, you know, surely that could well be incorporated into that overall kind of Golden Dome thing. But you know, I don't know if there's anyone who actually knows, you know, whether that will go ahead. Isn't there a big debate going on about that in the States at the moment, about exactly what infrastructure is going to be included in the Golden Dome? I don't know, maybe Bruce knows more about that than I do.
Well, I would say DARC fits right into the Golden Dome. Because again, if your strategy is to protect the United States from a counterstrike, from a counterattack after we launch a first strike attack on Russia and China, something that the US Space Command has been wargaming for years, computer wargaming. I read about one of their war games in Aviation Week and Space Technology some years ago. And they have a military lawyer sitting next to the computer. And when they go to launch the attack, they say, can we use this particular weapon system? In this case, it was the X-37, the military space plane, a super drone that has shown it can stay in orbit for a year at a time. It comes down from Earth and drops an attack on Russia and China. There are several of them now that have been built. And they turn to the lawyer and they say, does that violate the Outer Space Treaty? And he says, no, it doesn't, because the Outer Space Treaty bans weapons of mass destruction in space. And the X-37 is a weapon of selective destruction and therefore falls outside the treaty. So what they're working on is a series of weapons of selective destruction. And again, DARC's job would be to help direct an attack against these quote unquote enemy satellites using weapons of selective destruction through space. So I think it fits right into the overall program. And I would be very surprised if it was canceled, especially at a time when the military industrial complex is trying to scoop in as much money as they can from the taxpayers.
Thank you.
That's pretty useful, Bruce. Yeah, distinction between selective destruction and mass destruction. I hadn't heard that before. Thanks for that. Anyone else with questions? I actually have something I'd like you to talk about, Roy. We have a group where I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and our focus these days is on the genocide in Palestine and what's going on in the West Bank as well. And when we try to get people's attention with banners or flyers or so forth, and you have quite a comprehensive set of things you all have done with strategies, and congratulations to you all. We wonder what has more traction, whether it's self-interest, and that seems likely, what's going to, people talk about jobs here with the military industrial complex, and I don't know if there are any jobs associated with your radar system that might get built there, but that's one sort of counter push that there are jobs and we got to have them. But I can see that you have touched on international law as a point that people ought to think about, that this is illegal. You've touched on environmentalism. Something we want to bring to people's attention is the moral issue, for example, in Palestine. And I don't know if you use that as a way to get people's attention and engagement. And the other is the global repercussions. If this happens there with Israel and Palestine, most certainly, and we can actually see the same sort of things happening in other places, including our own country, with police, the kind of police state tactics that happen here now. So when you emphasize global issues, such as what Bruce is talking about, first strike capability, the possibility of nuclear holocaust, does that get people's attention as well? I mean, what is it that you find has the biggest hook to get people involved? You had 200 people showing up, so that's pretty good. You've got something going on. What is it you've got?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's many ways to reach people, and different people have kind of different priorities. There was a lady who spoke, who was interviewed at our beach demo, who was just going on about the health risks. She's got 2 kids, and that's all she cared about. She was asked about the global issue, and she didn't know anything about that. Whereas there's other people who, like if we're going to the UK Parliament, we can't really talk about just our the fact that we don't want our local environment to be damaged by by our local tourism industry, because they'll just think, oh well, it's just people who don't want that bypass road, or they've heard it all before. But so to them, we have to present a security argument which is coherent and in line with international law. So so that's what we did. But basically, we got several arguments. We got the health argument, we got the environmental argument, we got the tourism argument, and we've counted the usual military will create jobs argument, because actually the base at the moment is occupied by lots of army personnel, British Army, and that they'd have to leave. They are scheduled to leave in 2028. So if they build the array, there'll be a loss of about 600 jobs in the area, which will affect our local economy, because we're a very fragile local economy here. We're not like a big city or anything. We're like a very small ecosystem. we make most of our money out of tourism in the summer. We get loads of people because it's so beautiful that that we got this beautiful coastline and everybody comes down to see it. But the rest of the time, there's nothing going on. So those are the kind of issues that will get 200 people from a local community out, and that will put pressure on the local council and probably the Welsh Senedd as well. But it won't affect Parliament in London. So there's different. We try and pitch differently to different folks.
Yeah, that makes good sense. And let me just ask one other question before I turn it over to Mary Beth. What about money? Do you all have to have, I mean, it looks like it's mostly volunteers. You all are doing volunteer work, but is there a need, or do you have some place where you're getting funding for, 15,000 flyers and all that?
Well, we have had a little bit of money from CND Cymru, and we also launched a crowdfunder early in the campaign, and that kind of we're a little bit in the red, but we're just about breaking even. So
Yeah.
it's tough, but yeah, we are all volunteers, so nobody's getting a wage or anything. Everybody's doing it out because they really care about this this issue.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Mary Beth, go ahead. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay. I just want to state the obvious, Rory. This was such an inspiring presentation, and I know that you might not be feeling very inspired right now with all the hard work that you're doing. But it's just like the bastards are knocking us down in every way they possibly can. And your community has said, no, we are not going to be knocked down. If we're going down, we're going down fighting. And that inspiration feeds us all. I'm just so grateful. I'm sure that you all have a lot to do every day in your lives, but to understand what a big deal this is internationally, and to make that a priority is something that we all have to be deeply grateful for. So thank you.
Oh, thanks very much. I mean, I do feel like we're part of a kind of global network, as it's called. That the people who really care about peace and want to sort of, I mean, things have got in Gaza. What we see every day. I think, when you see the scale of these demonstrations that are going on. Like the world knows that this is a crucial moment where we've got to, if we keep going the way we're going, we are destined to annihilate ourselves. We've got to stop, and like what you guys are saying is that, follow the money. Where who is benefiting from all this military activity that's going on in the world? And it's there's about 5 super huge arms companies, I think the US, I've got like something like 40% of the world's spending on arms. And so that's a huge amount of dollars, and we've got to let people know this. It's not a conspiracy. It's people deliberately profiting from the death of human beings, and it's got to stop. If we can't stop it, there's no future for our children and for the next generations. So I mean, I'm sure that's what motivates us all, deep down. But thank you. I mean, we were lucky in this area because when I first moved here in the 80s, pretty soon afterwards, there was a proposal to build an huge over-the-horizon radar array literally behind my house, where the house I just bought on an old military runway. And people in my village got together and said, "No, we can't have that," and we said, "Okay, well, let's form PARC." And then it grew and grew and grew, and there was marches, and and we turned it round, and we won. And so that is rare in the peace community, isn't it, to actually win a campaign? So that that's what I'm building on, is because I know I can do this. I know I can win, and if I can win, so can you. But we just got to believe in ourselves.
I think that's the perfect place to call it quits on this webinar. And actually, Roy, that's actually why we wanted to have you, is because you have been successful over there in Wales and are still at it. And we have lots of people who are part of our network, War Industry Resistors Network, who were working against the war industry like you are. And yeah, so there's a little inspiration you're giving us all, Roy. I appreciate you a lot. Thank you for coming on to share with us. Thank you for all of you who are here. And we'll send the recording out. And any last words you have, Roy, for the good of the cause?
To keep working for peace, guys. That it is possible. It is possible to win, and we got to keep working together and keep strong. Keep our hearts pure, and we can stop all this stuff. We just must never give up.
Beautiful. Couldn't say it better. All right. Thank you all, and have a good day. And until we meet again, September the 3rd, we have another webinar. So we'll see you then. Okay. Bye all.